What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Day, and on this channel I talk about cybersecurity and other live stuff. And in this video we're going to be going over a quick overview of AWS Inspector. I'm currently studying for my AWS Solutions Architect, and I stumbled on this service and I felt like I could just do a quick lab on this service and just gonna show you guys a quick overview of what AWS Inspector does. So let's just get into it. All right, so here are some quick notes on AWS Inspector. So when we think about AWS Inspector, you want to immediately think about vulnerability management in AWS. So essentially, AWS Inspector is used to perform vulnerability scans on both EC2 instances and VPCs. So it is essentially an automated security assessment service that helps improve your security and compliance of applications deployed in AWS. So just kind of think of like Nessus or like Qualys or any form of vulnerability scanner, but specifically made by AWS and for your cloud resources in AWS. So you can automatically assess your applications for vulnerabilities or deviations from best practices. And after the assessment, it will essentially give you a detailed list of security findings prioritized by the level of security, just like any other vulnerability scanner. And these findings can be reviewed directly or as part of a detailed assessment report that are available to you via the AWS Inspector console or API. The AWS Inspector has two types of assessments. So essentially the network assessments and the host assessments. So the network configuration analysis helps to check for port reachability from outside of your VPC. And for this, you don't really need an agent. And then for the host assessment, it essentially checks for like vulnerable software and for like CIS benchmarks and security best practices. And for this, since there's more depth to it and it's like scanning your host specifically, you're gonna need a agent specifically installed on maybe like your EC2 instance to confirm these vulnerabilities. So we're not gonna talk too much. We're just gonna get right into the lab and see how we can use AWS Inspector for vulnerability scanning. So let's get into it. All right, so we're here in a sandbox environment, and we're going to be going over how we can use AWS Inspector for a quick vulnerability scan. So let's get into it. So we're going to be scanning our EC2 instance. So let's create an EC2 instance real quick. So launch instance, Linux 2 AMI, and T2 micro. All right, so let's edit the security groups. So we just want to essentially make this instance vulnerable, quote unquote. And so we're gonna expose some ports. So we're gonna expose, we already have SSH exposed. Let's expose SMB, that's a good one. So we're gonna expose SMB to anywhere. We're also gonna expose, let's see, we're gonna expose RDP, that's also another good one. Attackers definitely love their RDP. We're also gonna expose, let's do FTP as well. So port 21. See what else can we expose? Let's expose port 80, regular web server. So let's expose HTTP. Let's see, I'm just put that in there. All right, awesome. And we're gonna also put this for anywhere. Sweet. So we essentially have port 445, which is SMB. Great for some attack vectors. RDP also 21, which is FTP, and we also have port 80. So some standard ports are open. So let's review and launch our instance. Let's also add a tag, just gonna give it some reality to it. So let's say this is like a server in our production environment. So let's say edit, let's add a tag. So let's say key, let's say server, right? So we'll just say the key is a server, and we'll say value prod. All right, sweet. So we have that in, and then we'll see review and launch, and then we'll launch that instance. So we're gonna launch it without a key pair. So proceed without a key pair, acknowledge that, launch instance. This should create fairly fast. While we wait for that to launch, let's go and search for AWS Inspector or Amazon Inspector, whichever it is. Sweet. Open that in a new tab. Let's view our instances. So this is currently running, so we can just kind of look at the information of our instance. So we got security. So we can see here we have a bunch of really not so good ports open, right? We have them here. I could have easily created like a security group, but I think I'll just do it on the instance level since we're going to be scanning the instance specifically. Either way works. All right, let's go into AWS Inspector. As you can see, Amazon Inspector is an automated and continual vulnerability management at scale. Amazon Inspector is an automated vulnerability management service that continually scans workloads for software vulnerabilities and unintended network exposure. So let's get started. So we're gonna switch to Inspector Classic as a free version, and we're gonna get started. So this is where you can, if you wanted to install an agent on your EC2 instance, you can use this feature. But we're not gonna be doing that in this video. So let's get started. So it's kind of like like the assessment setup. You can pretty much like customize this to how you want it to be. So essentially, if you just want to do a run once assessment, let's kind of look at the advanced setup so we can kind of, I guess, customize this a little bit. So we're gonna just name this EC2 assessment test, and we just say include all the EC2 instances. We only have one. Install the Amazon Inspector agent on all EC2 instances in this assessment target. I guess we'll leave that on. That's fine. But we might not necessarily need that, but that's totally fine. So assessment template. So we'll just say this is a default assessment template. So this, if we have all of this and we have multiple instances, this could take potentially like a long time. But since we have just one instance, this is not going to take too long. So we don't want this to be a recurring assessment, so we're just going to turn that off. And so it's going to be scanning for network reachability, security best practices, CVEs, and CIS benchmarks. That's totally fine with us. Let's click next. All right, so we're looking at everything. That's totally fine. Let's see if our EC2 instance has been created. Awesome. And then we'll create. All right, so our assessment is currently running right now, and we can reload this to kind of see what's going on. So it's currently collecting data. This shouldn't take too long since we just have one instance, but we can kind of look at what the assessment is doing and like the duration and stuff like that. And the status is going to be shown here. So it's currently collecting data. So while we're waiting for our assessment to run, it's currently analyzing. We can kind of look at our assessment target, which should be our EC2 instance. So right here, we can see our assessment target, and we see the name of the assessment that we did, which is the EC2 assessment test. And if we open this out, so it includes all the EC2 instances, and we can preview the target, which is our EC2 instance that we just launched. So we can kind of cross-check that. So let's copy that instance ID, and it should be the same as the one that we have. So I0234, same for EEB. So that's the exact same EC2 instance that we specified, that we just created, since it's the only one in our environment. So let's see how our scan is doing. Awesome, our scan is complete. That didn't take too long. So we can open this to kind of see what our scan did. So it started at 3:12 a.m. and ended at 3:14. And we can see it had 6 findings. So let's go over to this tab and look at the findings. So if we look at the findings, we can see that, okay, we have a couple of findings here. So we have 6 findings. We have 1 informational, 1 low, 3 medium, and 1 high. So for the informational one, we see here, the informational one is network reachability. Essentially, our instance is reachable from the internet through this network interface. So this description is showing that there's access for these ports, and we have a recommendation on what we can do to remove the access from the internet. So we can edit this security group to do that. We also have a low one, and the low one is going to be, the finding was TCP port. HTTP is reachable from the internet. That could be fine. It could be a web server. So it gives us a description and also a recommendation to remove access from the internet on port 80 by editing a security group. Then we have 3 medium ones. So let's look at the first medium one. This one essentially shows that we have port 445, which is associated with SMB, is reachable from the internet, and this port, which is associated with SMB, is reachable from the internet, and we can edit the security group to remove access from the internet. The second medium severity one is for port 22, which is associated with 22, with SSH is reachable from the internet, and we also have a recommendation to remove access from port 22 in our security group. And the third one is going to be 3389, which is RDP, is reachable from the internet, and we can edit our security group to remove the access from 3389 for EC2 instance. And we have one high severity one, I believe this should be FTP. So we have port 21, which is FTP, is reachable from the internet, and we don't want that. That's why it's a high severity, and we can remove access from this port. We can remove access from the internet on port 21 in this security group. And we can also have like a really nice nice report that AWS can give to us. So we can just generate a report, and it's going to give us a really nicely done report in PDF form. So we have this nicely done report where it gives us pretty much the same things that we kind of went over, the descriptions and stuff like that, and all of the findings that it made. So we see all of these ports that were reachable from the internet from our EC2 instance and all of that fun stuff. All right, so now that we've looked over our assessments, let's go to EC2 and do some remediation of this security stuff. So we're here in EC2. This is our EC2 instance. So let's see our EC2 instance. So this is our EC2 instance right here. And what we can do is we can go to our security groups, and here we see that we have this security group right here, which has all of those permissions we set, right? The RDP, SSH, HTTP, SMB, FTP. And what we can do is, let's go back to security groups. All right, so we can select the security group actions, and we can edit the inbound rules for the security group. And what we can essentially do is we can delete RDP, we can delete SSH, HTTP, FTP, SMB, RDP, FTP, SMB, and let's just leave only HTTP for this. So let's save these rules. Cool. And we see we only have one permission entry now, which is only inbound access for HTTP. Okay, so now that we've edited the security groups, let's go back to Inspector, and let's go back to our templates, and let's run this same template that we just did for our first assessment. Since we've done the remediation, we should only get like an informational back. So let's run this again, and let's go back to assessment runs, and let's reload that. Okay, I accidentally ran this twice, but here we have run this assessment again, and now we have 0 findings. So let's go into it, and we can see here we have 0 findings, pretty much because we have already remediated all of our stuff, and we no longer have all of the ports exposed. So that's it for Amazon Inspector. Amazon Inspector is great for running vulnerability assessments on your AWS EC2 instances or things in your VPC. And just like any vulnerability scanner like Qualys, Nessus, it's great for running these vulnerability scans for like network reachability, security best practices, common vulnerabilities and exposures, and CIS benchmarks. So that's it for this video. If you like this video, please be sure to smash the like button and be sure to subscribe for more videos like this on cloud and cloud security and cybersecurity. With that said, I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.